Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫.
And this is episode 128.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. Hope y'all are enjoying your summer. I just dropped off Daisy to her last day of kindergarten. And my gosh, one word, riot. She was a regular riot. And I forgot, well, I didn't forget. I had to do a little photo shoot with her later on in the day because you were looking for a specific picture and I thought you just wanted to capture her in the moment. And she was like, friends, get together. We're going to take a picture. And I was like, cool. And then she grabs the phone and like one of her friends wants to grab another phone. And I grabbed another phone and took a picture of her with a phone in her hand, take a picture. We had a group shoot together, but we did not get the picture you were looking for. So then I beelined it to to where she goes to the Y after kindergarten, and she saw me right away, and we did a little. Let me tell you, that girl knows how to do a photo shoot. She shocked me. I was a little surprised.
She freaked me out the other night. She was reading a book, and I was filming her reading a book because it was like the first time she's read a book front to back, like pretty fluidly. And she finished reading the book and she looks at the camera and she's like, thank you for subscribing to my book reading channel. If you like it, make sure you give a thumbs up. And I was just like, what dystopian nightmare garbage is happening right now? Like, how does she even know that? She's never seen one of our YouTube videos ever. I have a lock on YouTube, like a password, so she can't get into it on her own, because one day I came downstairs and caught her saying to the remote, like saying to Siri to search in YouTube. She was like, Siri, search creepy videos too creepy for kids. And I was like, that's it. Kind of funny, but yeah, man, she is like a different person from the first day of kindergarten to the last day of kindergarten. It is really wild. They grow super fast and it's crazy. And I didn't even tell you this, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫. Excuse me. A bunch of kids were picking on her for being a vegan this week.
Shut up.
Yeah.
What did they have to say? They
said vegans are bad people and they don't like vegans. And they called her Carrot Girl, which is particularly funny because I don't think we've ever sent her to school with carrots specifically. But yeah, the kids were picking on her for being vegan at the ripe age of 6. So she's starting to put 2 and 2 together that might make her a little bit different than the other kids. Even though, like, I think we sent her to school with pretty normal, like, kid food, you know? Sun butter and jelly sandwiches and pouches of applesauce and...
Really, like this generation, you would think there's more hope for veganism being a little more accepted, even if it's not your choice, whomever you are. Yes, I'm talking to you, child. I'm sitting here calling out a child that I don't even know. That just grinds my gears. I don't understand where that's coming from, but I guess I'm not completely surprised, right? Because kids are mean. And kids are confused and they're just trying to figure out the world. But that's a little bit upsetting that there's already that standpoint that vegans are different and not necessarily in a good way or a way that's socially acceptable. That's a bummer to hear.
Yeah, we'll continue to cross that bridge. But yeah, watching your kiddo of sorts get like picked on at all brings up a lot of feelings, mostly of wanting to throat punch other kindergartners, but you can't do that, so.
Did you feel that way as a child?
What?
If you saw a kid getting picked on, or if you were picked on, did you feel like you wanted to like retaliate and attack?
I guess. I don't know. I didn't get picked on at 5 and 6. I meant now, as an adult.
Oh, I wasn't following you.
Anyway. What else is going on, 𝐬𝐿? Well, it's actually, as of today, it's not even summer yet. It's still June 16th, the day we're recording this, but I don't think this comes out for a month.
Well, we will have just gotten back from LA, right?
When this comes out.
And I'm curious to see what this event, in hindsight, will have been like at LA, because we did it at Vegas last time. It's the Idea Expo. It's a bunch of fitness professionals and fitness fanatics all getting together, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening all at once. And we got some of our buddies from Unisoy that are coming through, and they'll have done like a little bit of a photo shoot with us, and we'll get to chill and this and that. So that'll be nice. Hopefully we get to see some of y'all out there. I absolutely love when we have the opportunity and it becomes a realization where our friends, our colleagues, our clients, whomever, like we get to hang out with you in person. We travel. To me, that's like one of the things I love the most, aside from the all of it, but I think that's one of the greatest joys of traveling, like just getting to hang out afterwards with people.
So what are we talking about today, 𝐬𝐫𝐽?
The actual episode?
Yeah, it's actually not about bullying 6-year-olds.
Oh, you're still there. I'm already way past there. I forgot about that conversation entirely. But let's see. Today we're talking about metabolic damage. Is it real? And if so, how to fix it? So the first thing that you have to ask yourself is metabolic damage real? Simple answer to that, yes, it's real. Although, when you go a little deeper with it, what you realize is that metabolic damage is not easy to cause, and it doesn't affect as many people as you would think that it does. I feel like metabolic damage on the whole is just like a blanket statement for, I dieted too hard, and now I'm stuck here, and I have to like reverse diet or this or that. When in reality, metabolic damage is when you've really screwed yourself over for a very long period of time, and you've dieted down super hard, and your thyroid ain't working right, and this and that, et cetera, as opposed to just you've dieted down and your metabolism has down-regulated for a period of time, and now you just got to eat a little more to get back to a better state of balance, where your body's doing more with food. You're making a lot of faces, but you're not saying
There's a reason this is not a video podcast, guys. I can't control my face super duper well.
I'm trying.
So I would back all the way up to the beginning. Is metabolic damage real? You were like, yes. I would say no.
You don't think it's real?
Well, first of all, I think it's the worst named thing in the entire world.
True.
It's up there with nutritional yeast. Why would anybody name something so delicious, something so horrible? But metabolic damage makes it sound like you damaged your metabolism and now it is damaged. Like, that's not what it is at all. So first of all, what do people even mean when they say metabolic damage? It means they think that for a plethora of reasons, usually poor dieting practices, they have slowed down their metabolism to the point that it is now damaged and they can't lose weight because it's damaged. Clearly, I don't think anything is damaged. Sometimes people call this starvation mode. Like, you're in starvation mode, so you can't lose weight because you're in starvation mode, which, like, if we actually stop and think about that for a second, if starvation mode was real, meaning when you starved yourself, you couldn't lose weight, nobody would starve to death. And we all know that's not true. So literally just using logical thought for a second, starvation mode doesn't actually make sense. What is real, and I think this is what you're getting at, I just would have probably worded it a little bit differently, is that thermogenic adaptation is real. Your metabolism can adapt and does adapt to a lot of things. And one of the ways it can adapt is down-regulation or slowing down. But this is not damage. This is what metabolisms are supposed to do. It's actually functioning perfectly.
So here's my question. Say that you develop hypothyroidism and your thyroid has dysfunction because you've dieted yourself down for like 5 years. Let's not go into any other reasoning, and let's just say that affects your metabolic capacity. How would you define that?
How would I define hypothyroidism?
Well, that state of being, like that's, I mean, my opinion, to me, that seems like metabolic damage. Although I understand where you're coming from completely in terms of like the words are incorrect. They're factually incorrect. And scientifically speaking, the logic is not there for saying it. And people just use it as a narrative to go off on a tangent about. And I feel like that's what this whole episode should be about. However, in that kind of circumstance, in my opinion, like, yeah, I mean, like, you don't have the same metabolic capacity because you have thyroid issues now because you've dieted down.
The vast majority of people who develop thyroid issues that either are or mimic hypothyroidism via dieting for too long will be able to recover that function once they stop dieting. It's a very small percentage of people who don't. And there are also people who develop hypothyroidism that never dieted. Like sometimes it just happens to people for genetic reasons or other reasons or medication reasons. But most, and I do want to say most, because I think that there is, and I've met folks like this, there is a sliver of the population that I think has undereaten for so long, undereaten by so much for so long, and I'm talking to the tune of decades on top of decades, that I just don't think that their body is going to function properly, like ever. So, that I think is actually damage, but is it metabolic damage specifically, or is that decades of malnutrition just like compounding to a body that doesn't function optimally anymore? I don't know. But 99, I'm making this number up, 99% of people who think they're dealing with metabolic damage are likely just dealing with a metabolic adaptation that will bounce back when they fix some of their problematic behaviors around dieting.
Right. And honestly, the fitness industry, it's pervasive. The way that coaches and those that drop knowledge and those who are super into fitness in general just go off on these wild goose chases to overdefine something, and then they wind up making the wrong decisions or thinking about things improperly, like saying everything's metabolic damage, just to try to explain away how someone needs to eat a little bit more or eat a little bit less, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it's not really ridiculous if you think about it. Isn't that kind of a nice idea, actually, that the reason that you're struggling to lose weight or body fat is because of metabolic damage, not because of a host of reasons that maybe you have more control over? It's kind of a sexy idea. Oh, I have metabolic damage, and the only way to fix my metabolic damage is to eat more. And reverse diet. And I like reverse diets for certain applications, but that in 2014, 2015, that was a really, really commonly held belief, even by some of the scientific community that were calling it metabolic damage. Now I think they realize oops, we planted that seed way too much. This isn't actually damage, it's adaptation, and you can adapt in the other direction as well. The evidence-based fitness community has corrected for that mistake, but man, that certainly spread like wildfire, like you said. So I do want to talk about it though, because those metabolic adaptations, which ones are totally benign and not a problem at all, and which of them can be a problem, and what should you watch for, and can you fix it? And is it even inherently bad? All of these things I think are important to talk about.
So go ahead, bring it out. Danny, what do you got?
So a couple of things to think about when we do look at some of the studies that talk about metabolic damage. One of the ones that they looked at was actually Biggest Loser contestants. So the Biggest Loser was a dog shit show for a plethora of reasons. It was certainly interesting to watch, and I found it interesting to watch, but if you were to rewatch some of especially the earlier episodes of The Biggest Loser, not only is it wildly shamey and fat-phobic and gross, but also all of the tactics that they use to help these people lose weight, or the plans that they put them on, are incredibly unsustainable, likely very dangerous, actually, for not just their joints, but also their organs and things like that. But they looked at them and said, oh, look, they put these people on these crazy restrictive diets, they had massive weight loss, and then their metabolism slowed down significantly. Well, some of them lost 100 to 200 pounds. It stands to reason you're gonna, even if everything else stayed the same, it stands to reason somebody that is 300 pounds is going to burn way fewer calories in a day than someone who is 500 pounds, right? Is that damage? I don't think so. Anytime somebody becomes smaller, they burn fewer calories because it takes fewer calories to like keep their body going.
Yeah.
That's not damage.
No.
That's just how it goes.
Right. But you can be in a state where you're not giving yourself enough energy and your body's it's in limbo. It's not quite full of energy and it's not quite dieting down, and you could be eating a little bit more. And I think people stay there and to me, it's like a really important.
Oh, we're going to get
fix.
there.
Okay.
Don't
well,
worry.
I don't want to jump ahead, but to me, like a little seed for you listening to this, that is a very important tip that you're going to get from us on this episode, and a little quick fix that could change or rock your whole world on what you're doing and the fear around what you do or the confusion around what you're doing.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode, and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our Vegan Proteins members only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and they're absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at Vegan Proteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
So you're saying that this study was one that pointed to there being evidence that there's such a thing as metabolic damage, and that was one of the reasons that was cited, Danny? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I said if everything was equal, a 300-pound person will burn fewer calories than a 500-pound person. But everything was not equal. The smaller people did burn at a slightly slower rate, but this difference was about 10%. 10%. That's not a huge difference when you exclude their size. Like outside of that, pound for pound, it was down by about 10%. Now, where does that would be the adaptation. That 10% is the adaptation. And since study after study has shown that thermogenic adaptation, aka metabolic adaptation, only changes your metabolism up to about 10%, which is not huge. You feel it when you're dieting. 10% of your calories feels like a lot of your calories, but what is that? What is the 10%? What happens? Well, you've heard us talk about some of these things on the podcast before. Do you want to talk about some of the actual adaptations that happen?
Sure. Off the top of my head, the most obvious one is how mobile or less mobile you become when you're not actively trying to move your body. Meaning that you find ways to be less fidgety, you find ways to make things around your house easier to get to, you find ways to get up and sit down less. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your NEAT, what you do that is not you actively trying to move, you just wind up using less energy and moving less because you're not eating as much. It's energy conservation.
Yep, that's one. Another one would be like your internal temperature. If you've ever been on a diet for an extended period of time, you will notice that you start to feel cold. Like you're cold when logically you know it's not actually cold. Like I've been in prep in the middle of the summer and had to wear a hoodie because I'm cold. Even though it's summer, I know it's not cold, but I'm cold because my body is conserving energy and not keeping me nice and toasty warm. It's kind of a joke amongst bodybuilders that the more shredded we get, the less of our body you're actually going to see because we're just constantly covered up because we're all cold. So that's another way that we conserve energy. Also, you're eating less food and it actually costs your body quite a bit of energy to digest that food. So if you're eating less of it, you're burning fewer calories that way. Let's see, you might not be sleeping as well. And we've talked about how the better your sleep is, the better you're able to use up energy. Obviously, you're going to move more when you're better rested. When you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't move as much. Hormonal changes. Hormones dictate a lot of things, from sex hormones to thyroid hormones. It dictates a lot of things, and that can be, like you were mentioning earlier, one of the reasons why we burn fewer calories as well. Also, if we've lost muscle mass, we're going to burn fewer calories than if we just solely lost body fat. So, you do have some control over that, but you might not actually kind of know what's happening until after the fact. So that's another way.
Eating a little less, so you're not having as much non-stored energy to use throughout the day, perhaps. Maybe that's a reach.
Say it again.
If you're not eating as much, you're not having as much energy that's readily available. It's not stored energy, meaning like the food that you're eating for the day that you burn off because you're eating it, and it's there, ready for energy.
Sure. I mean, I don't actually know about that one, but the gist is that your body is trying to conserve energy any way it can. It'll slow down your digestion. Anywhere that it can try to conserve some energy because it recognizes that you're not eating enough. By definition, if you are in a caloric deficit, you are not eating enough. That is the definition. And when your body starts to recognize that, it will start to conserve energy. And this is that 10% metabolic adaptation that we see.
This is the game that we play with our clients, with ourselves, and with the information we put out there, that when energy conservation becomes a thing, that not only do you fight it, you actually become even more energetic than you normally are, and you find a way. And that's how you wind up not closing the gap between the calorie deficit that gets you the results you're looking for, and you get results, right? Because at some point your body will eventually cooperate, but why would you want your body to slow down by as much as 10 to even upwards of 15%, thus making you have to diet down harder when you could fight to hold on to your muscle? You could burn even more, well, because it's a pain in the butt, but that's the game you play when you diet down, because if you don't play that game, you'll have to eat even less, risk losing more muscle, it'll hurt even more, and the end result won't be as good. So you have to do the hard thing. And while you're in energy conservation mode, like biologically speaking, you have to play that mental game, and you have to do the thing, and you have to work even harder than normal to make sure that you get to where you want to be. Otherwise, it's almost kind of pointless to diet down, in my opinion.
I would also say this is part of the reason why finding your maintenance calories is consistently a moving target. People think if they find their maintenance calories, like bing, bang, bong, they found it. They can just live here in maintenance forever. But that maintenance number, it moves around a lot, depending on a lot of different factors. Because the same way your metabolism can downregulate, like we're talking about here, your metabolism can also upregulate, which we're going to get to. This is why it's not damage. It's just an adaptation that can come back. So, what are some of the consequences of these downregulating metabolic changes that can happen? Well, the one that people notice immediately is that their weight loss slows down. That's the one that people notice instantly. It's the one that people talk to us about the most. Hey, I'm only eating XYZ calories and I'm still not losing weight. What the heck is going on? That's a loaded question, because actually, metabolic adaptation would not be the first thing that I think when someone says that to me.
Yeah. And then all the other reasons that you cited are pretty obvious ones. You start getting a little more cold. You start getting a little more lethargic.
Yes, those are other ones. But I don't think people don't come to me and say, hey, I'm cold. They say, hey, my progress isn't moving. I can ask them things like, oh, are you feeling cold? Are you having a hard time sleeping? Is your libido much lower than it was? Are you having like mood regulation problems at all? All of these things would kind of point to that.
Something I like looking at is when clients start to speak a little more slowly.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite one in the entire world. Because that's a surefire sign that they are dieting down. When you they're like literally their cadence slows down drastically.
But I mean, I think this is an important thing to talk about. When someone is in bodybuilding prep, when someone is getting shredded, there's no way around these things that we're talking about. You aren't going to get to the stage without experiencing at least some of the things that we just mentioned. But should the average person who just wants to get in, like, I guess, a quote unquote healthy shape, whatever that means, you know, like a normal healthy BMI range, if someone wants to lose weight to get there, should they be experiencing these things that we're talking about?
Not to an extreme degree, maybe a little bit here and there, but if you're getting like all of the things at once and you really feel it, then no.
Agreed.
You're either hyper aware of yourself or you're doing a little too much. You shouldn't be taking it that far, going that hard.
I agree. And I think that's really important because, yes, I know there are vegan bodybuilders that listen to this show. There are lots of fitness enthusiasts that listen to this show. And there are a lot of people who would consider themselves to be kind of like everyday gym goers or people interested in fitness, but they feel like they have a long way to go. And I don't want people in that position to think, oh boy, in order for me to reach my healthy goal weight and my healthy, fit, active lifestyle, I'm going to need to have hormone changes and get freezing cold and slow down and be fatigued all the time. I think if you are experiencing those things, you have probably set your calories way too low or your activity way too high, and you're not going to be able to maintain this or sustain this long term to get to that goal. And that is the real problem to me, is when people who are trying to reach like normal, healthy, fit levels, crash diet like a bodybuilder, do experience these metabolic adaptations. They can't sustain it. And then here's the kicker. When they do start eating quote unquote normally again, which is already going to be hard to do because if you've been under eating dramatically for a long time, you're much more likely to actually end up binging. But let's say they don't binge. Let's say they just go back to eating quote unquote normal. Well, now their metabolism is like 10% slower and they're going to gain weight, 10% faster than they probably should for that particular caloric intake, and that is wildly discouraging for a lot of people.
Right. So they wind up getting into a cycle where they're not doing what they need to do because they're confused and their bias is causing them to make the wrong decisions, which really sucks.
Yeah, and it also reinforces the idea that they have to eat super low calorie, right? I'm just going to make up some numbers. Let's say a woman that's 180 pounds wants to lose weight. She starts eating 1,200 calories a day. She does that for a couple months. Let's say she gets down to like 160 or something. And she's like, heck yeah, this is great. I'm going to take a break though, because this has been really hard. And she starts eating 1,600 or 1,800 calories a day, which is still not a lot for somebody that size. But she immediately gains back 10, 12, 15 pounds. And she's like, oh, so this is it for the rest of my life. I just have to eat 1,200 calories. But this time when she goes down to 1,200 calories, it doesn't work as well as it did the first time. Now she's got to do 1,100 calories to get the same result. But she can't do that forever. So then she goes back to eating 1,600 calories, balloons back up, says, oh shit, goes back to 1,100 calories. Now that's not working. Now she's got to do 1,000. Now 1,500 calories is making her balloon up. Like, do you see how this can literally slingshot back? And this is yo-yo dieting. This is how it happens, is this way, rather than the alternative. Let's say that 180 pound person from day one wants to lose weight, and we set, this is hypothetical. I don't know anything about this imaginary person, but let's say she ate like 1,800 calories Monday through Friday and like 2,000 calories on the weekend. Yes, her results would come much slower, but they would be sustainable and she would be able to keep them and feel good about it. And it wouldn't turn into this just like decades long spiral, which is often how I think we have so many women, particularly women, that come to us that are in their late 50s, 60s, 70s, that are like kind of horrified when we suggest they eat, something above 1,400 calories. How often does that happen? Think about it.
Well, and at that point, if they've been doing it for 10, 20, 30...
or longer.
Now you run into the problem where, unfortunately, you don't have the metabolic capacity to eat more because you haven't developed your muscles. You haven't had a lifestyle where you're mobile and active, and you'll just sit there and, well, you don't want to sit there and blame yourself and get caught in that kind of shame spiral either. However, you're in a bit of a different predicament and had nothing to do with dieting, so to speak, but it was the effect of dieting that changed how often you moved and how you felt. And
your muscle mass, right? Like if you're crash dieting multiple times a year, you might see some significant loss on the scale for those periods. But if that loss is muscle, you effectively just slowed your metabolism down beyond adaptive thermogenesis here, beyond that 10%. Is this the metabolic quote unquote damage people are talking about? Because yeah, I guess I would consider that to be damage. If you burned your muscle off systematically up and down over and over again, and of course, when you gain the weight back, you're not gaining muscle back. Every time you go through this yo-yo cycle, you're effectively losing muscle and then putting body fat back on.
And genetically, your metabolism is going to be what it's going to be, more or less, like your potential, I should say. But you can waste that potential over the years if you don't build the right kind of structure internally because you've been constantly dieting down, whether it comes to your muscle, whether it comes to your other organs like your heart health, or how just like your basic functions. If they don't fire off in a way where you're an active person because you've been dieting down, well then yes, you will be shortchanging yourself in terms of your metabolic capacity. And then to what you're saying, right, I'm on the same point here, you have thus in turn caused damage. And then the question here is it reversible? Is it permanent? Well, I don't feel that way ever. I mean, yeah, it could be an uphill battle, but you could always make a change. Whether you're 30, whether you're 80, you can always change your trajectory. It's never a death sentence.
So let's get into, right before we get into like, okay, well, how do I work on improving this pickle I may have gotten myself into? I do want to just point out that metabolic adaptation will affect everybody differently. Some people's metabolisms like pretty much won't change, and some people's will change very quickly after you start dieting. And that, the faster your metabolism adapts to a diet, the more efficient your body is, which sounds like a good thing, right? Like, wow, your body is so efficient at utilizing calories. But when it comes to fat loss, we don't want that. We want inefficiency. We want your body to be absolute crap at conserving energy, basically. So I just wanted to say that, like, genetically, different people are going to experience different rates of metabolic change. Okay? So, how do you begin to repair, or see, repair even sounds like damage. I don't like that. How do you begin to reverse some of these adaptations?
I totally applaud your fight here to make sure that we do not perpetuate false information and where it can go off on like some real poor train of thought. Because again, like metabolic damage is just one of those things where people hear it and they run away with the thought, and all of a sudden there's just a whole bunch of stupidity out there and it causes actual real damage.
Well, it's not stupidity, right? Like,
well, you know what I mean.
Here's the thing about a lot of misinformation, period. But especially in the nutrition and fitness world, obviously that's where I see a lot of it. But I think this reaches across every subject. A lot of these misinformation things, they're built on a kernel of truth, right? There is a kernel of truth in there, but a lot of times it just gets oversimplified and watered down to be able to be delivered to the masses in a 20-second TikTok.
Right. Correct.
And that is where I think we lose a lot of the important pieces of it.
Right. So I cannot overstate. I don't want to go there. You know, I don't want to assume, I don't want y'all to get lost in it. However, hopefully by now, this far into the conversation, you're not going to go there with in terms of like metabolic damage, is it not? How to start repairing it? Well, the very first thing to do is to start eating a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Simple.
Simple, but is it easy? Oh boy, it is certainly not easy. I mean, if someone's coming out of a bodybuilding prep, yeah, it's easy. They're literally dying to eat more. If somebody has been struggling with weight loss for years, and I look at them and I say, I understand how hard this is for you, and I understand that you're going to have a hard time believing what I'm about to say next, but I need you to eat more because your body needs to adjust to a higher calorie level if you're ever going to see this ultimate like goal through to its end. We're going to have to eat more now. And that is very scary to a lot of people.
And even when you want to commit to it, you wind up finding struggles because the fear, whether you want to feel it or not, is there, and you wind up either not being able to do it at all, and then there's mental muck there, or you wind up doing it and you overshoot because you're uncomfortable with the idea and the process because you've been so used to eating less.
Well, I think even if you don't overshoot, I think some weight gain is going to be a part of that. Whew, that's a tough thing to sell to somebody whose ultimate goal is weight loss. I have a client right now, I'm not going to drop her name, but she is fantastic. And she came to me in exactly this position. She had been doing some other programs out there that are trash. I also won't name names. And had been restricting for a really, really long time, like 2 years, more or less, on and off with these crazy cardio regimens and macros that were just bananas to me for way too long. And yes, she made progress on that, but exactly what I just said. When she took a break from it, she would balloon back up. And then the next time she did it, she'd have to go harder and drop her calories lower, et cetera, et cetera. When she came to me, she said, like, I think she was like 160-ish pounds. And her ultimate goal was to be 140 pounds. But where she was right then, eating something like 1,300 calories and already doing 45 minutes of cardio most days of the week, I said, your body has been through hell and we need to give it a little bit of a break. And what I'm going to try to do is increase your metabolic capacity and try to walk those calories up over the next 6 months. So this is a reverse diet. When you hear about reverse dieting, this is it. And we did that. And over the 6 months, I would say she gained about 5 pounds, which of course she did not love that, right? But she knew this was going to be part of the process because I warned her that it was going to be part of the process. But all of her strength increased significantly. She feels stronger head to toe. Her sleep was better. Her mood was better. Her measurements actually were all good, like the circumference measurements. And now, I think it was actually more than 6 months because she was enjoying this process so much. But we recently, probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, just started to do a proper cut. And now she is cutting on, I don't remember the exact amount, but she's cutting on something like 1,700 calories during the week and like 2,000 calories on the weekend. And we're already back down that 5 pounds. We're actually down about 8 pounds now with, we have a ways to go, but the photos already are like amazing. And I just, I know it's hard to buy into this concept, but I also know a lot of people listening to this podcast are in exactly the place that I am talking about and wanting to rip their hair out about it. So, one, if that's you, reach out to us. We can help you. And not just help you come up with the plan, but also hold your hand through the process because we recognize that it is scary to trust this process. It feels bad to feel like your body is moving in the opposite direction of the way you want to go for a minute so that we can take bigger steps forward eventually. But it's worth it. it's so worth the effort. Doesn't it sound nicer to diet on 1,800 calories versus having to diet on 1,100 calories?
Doesn't it sound nicer to have a better look at the end? Doesn't it sound nicer to be able to still get stronger and to feel better and to give yourself a little bit of a mental break, even if you're a do or die kind of person that can always do and execute? Really, honestly, you can use that mental energy for something else, for example.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a side tangent.
That's fine.
Apologize. The next thing that you can do to reverse some of these metabolic adaptations, or even to prevent them from happening the first time, is to do everything in your power to maintain your lean muscle mass.
Right. Okay. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Muscle is more metabolically active than body fat. So if in your weight loss journey you're burning through your muscle, you're slowing down your metabolism.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
Keeping that muscle on your body while you diet is one of the reasons that your metabolism is going to stay, up where it is. And of course, in the opposite direction, if you are trying to rebuild or build for the first time, maybe metabolic capacity, deliberately working on building muscle is also going to speed up your metabolism.
Metabolic capacity is deliberately going to speed up your metabolism, meaning that you're putting more muscle on. I'm losing you a little bit.
If you are working on trying to build up your metabolic capacity, either rebuild it or build it for the first time,
Gotcha.
focusing on building muscle is a great way to do that.
Yeah, we're on the same page. And it's so much fun, too. It's such a nice area to focus on as opposed to constantly thinking about food. Now you get to just enjoy getting stronger and being more physical. Like, that's seriously, how is that not a part of this, right? How could that be a bad thing? It's not going to get you to forget about your nutritional needs or your health or your cycles where you're focusing on different stages as far as like your body composition goals, your body goals, so to speak. It's just going to give you a little bit of a break and something to focus on that's actually going to benefit you all around.
The next thing I would say that would be helpful is actually eating a balanced diet, like a diet with balanced macronutrients. So if you have, for example, completely cut out carbohydrates or fats or what have you, making sure that you're getting a balanced amount of carbs, fats, and protein, lots of vitamins and minerals. There's a lot of hormones that need fat, and vitamins for that matter, that need fat to be absorbed into our body or to be created in our body in hormones senses. Carbohydrates are the body's preferred source of fuel. And, if you don't eat carbohydrates for a really long time and then you reintroduce them, your body isn't going to handle them as well as if it's just been used to them the entire time.
This is where it gets murky because I feel like people who need something to focus on to maintain a lower amount of calories or to diet down, they wind up trying to be like, oh, okay, well, I can do this better with higher fat, or I can enjoy this more with lower carb. And I don't think that they're demonizing carbs or fats per se. I just think they're trying to focus on a certain way of eating that will make them feel more satisfied.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that. I think people have certain preferences, but only to a point.
And then eventually, if you don't stable out after the fact, you can, in fact, mess with your body's ability to re-regulate itself and be healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, I work with a good amount of clients who just prefer higher carbs and lower fat. They just, doesn't sound fun to me, but they seem to like it. And I'm like, we can do that. But I'm not comfortable dropping your fats below, say, 40 grams if you're a woman. I'm not comfortable with doing that because you need at least that, just for your health. So, yeah, you can play with those variables, but I think keeping a balance is important of just a well-balanced diet, nothing too restrictive in any particular direction. Another thing that you can do to help kind of rev the metabolism. When we covered this on the more recent one, literally, how do you speed up your metabolism? It's a lot of similar things that we're talking about here. It's to move. It's to move your body, and I'm not talking about just exercise, because most people who are crash dieting and trying to get thinner and thinner, they're already exercising quite a bit. I'm talking about just like your day-to-day life, just trying to stay active in your normal daily goings. The overall caloric burn of that is going to actually probably be much higher than most strength training workouts.
Simple things. And sometimes it can be the perpetual motion kind of perspective that you can take, where it takes a little bit of effort and you feel like you're too stressed, or you don't have time, or you don't have the energy, but then you commit to doing a walk every day, as an example, for like 10 minutes, and then you up it to 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, a month later, when you've stopped walking for 3 days, you just notice that in general, throughout the day, you're moving more. Because it's not, as opposed to like a race of how many minutes can you and how often can you do this, so you're not like locked into, oh my gosh, I need to do this thing and I need to do more. It's the fact that you've been moving more in general, so that even when you stop walking, you'll see too, especially if you're tracking, it's the truth. You'll wind up being a more active person because you've found ways to put activity into your life where in the past you were in a place where you just weren't moving as much, so you just slow down all over the place.
The last thing that I would say, and maybe I should have actually started with this, because I did mention that there are a very small number of people who are dealing with bigger problems. So if you think that might be you, I would highly recommend that you do speak to a doctor, a dietitian, an endocrinologist, just to rule out that there is anything medical going on. Probably should have started with that, because we are not doctors. But a lot of the things we're talking about today, we have dealt with in hundreds of clients. But there are some people, and I literally, with over 2,500 people that we've worked with, I could probably count it on one hand the number of people that I have said, we've done this, we've done that, we've tried all of these things. I believe them. It's not an adherence issue. And I say, I think we should go get our blood work done and just get XYZ thing checked out, just to rule out that anything off is going on. But I think people should get their blood work done every year anyway. If you have access to that, I think everybody should do that. But certainly if you're experiencing some of the things that we talked about, rule it out. Rule out the other things. But increasing your food, improving your lean muscle mass, eating a balanced diet, and all of that is going to be helpful for you regardless of what else is going on. But talk to a doctor if there's any problems. Oof, I got a big question for you today, 𝐬𝐿𝐾𝐿. I picked this one out specifically for you. I'm totally putting you on the spot here. Are you ready?
I love being put on the spot. Bring it.
What are your thoughts on animal rights activists that are not vegan? That's fear in your eyes right now.
That's astonishment in my eyes right now. Where would you find such a person?
What do you mean?
An animal rights activist who is not vegan. Give me an example.
Oh, there's tons. Go to any pet shelter.
Okay, now I'm following. Now I'm starting to think about something like that. Gotcha. So,
or people that advocate against wearing fur, or there's tons of animal rights activists who are not vegan or sometimes even vegetarian. Just curious to hear your open-minded thoughts on that.
They're one step closer to getting there, but that much more defensive because they already feel like they're doing their part because they love animals and they're advocating for them. So I think it's even harder for them to come full circle and to adopt a plant-based diet and veganism for all the reasons. I also feel for them because they understand that there's a moral and ethical dilemma that they face, and they don't know how to confront that and to be on the side that they want to be on. And it's really challenging, honestly, coming from an empathetic place, quite frankly. That's my opinion on animal rights activists that are not vegan. There's no judgment there. And unfortunately, sometimes those conversations are the most difficult ones, because at least on the other side, when someone has no interest or they don't want to hear it, like, you can let go of those conversations. It's like you're planting a seed, or you're trying to and you're not, and that's fine. The ones like that, though, those are a little tricky.
They are, actually. Those are hard conversations, because it's like, you get it, but somewhere there's still a bit of a disconnect here. I mean, the way I look at it, not that you asked, but the way I look at it is...
Sorry.
Is that anybody that's working towards improving the quality of animals' lives in any capacity, I look at that as a positive.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that folks that are doing that kind of work are still doing outstanding work. They're doing more than most people are doing, even if they go home and eat a burger at the end of the night. Do I wish that they were vegan? Of course that I do, but I'm not going to sit here in judgment of that. I mean, put it this way, there's lots of areas of hypocrisy, because that's what we're thinking about, right? Like, isn't that a little hypocritical to do this but also eat animals? There are plenty of areas of hypocrisy in my own life. I am certain of it, that some of them I've never even considered before. You know, I consider myself to be like a pretty humanitarian person. I would bet money on this table right now that there are things in this house that were like made by child slaves, you know, simply by owning Apple products. I mean, that's pretty questionable, isn't it? From a lot of different standpoints. Ordering from Amazon, what a terrible company. You know, there are so many areas that I feel like we could all do better in. And even when you're aware of it, like, I am aware that owning Apple products is incredibly problematic for the environment and human rights, but I still own Apple products. You know what I mean? So far be it for me to judge other people for maybe having their own moral and ethical dilemmas. And like, being a human being is really friggin' hard, and trying to make the right choices all the time can be really hard. And, you know, we're all doing our best.
And you want to be an ally to the things that you believe in, even if they don't look ideal to you, because you'll stand to gain more information, more of a connection with the world, and learn more about how to do your part to leave the earth better off, as opposed to being shut down and shut off from it and arguably hurting yourself in the process.
Right. Like, I think it's really important to just be open-minded about our own shortcomings rather than just immediately pointing at somebody else's shortcomings, because I guarantee you, like, most of us have them. But I thought that was a really fascinating question. We could probably talk about that a lot more, but we'll leave it there for now.
Danny, can you build muscle from nothing with only a vegan diet, since most vegan bodybuilders already had muscle before they went vegan?
So I don't know where this idea that most vegan bodybuilders had muscle before they went vegan came from. Certainly some of them did. Like, there were some established bodybuilders and athletes that went vegan and continued to be great athletes, but there were just as many of us, from my standpoint, that were not even a tiny bit athletic when we went vegan and then became athletes. So I would say seek those people out. I mean, 𝐬𝐫𝐫𝐷𝐿𝐵𝐴𝐷O is actually a great example of somebody who's never had meat in his life and is loaded with muscle. Was Tory Washington vegan his whole life?
I want to say yes.
I think he was vegetarian his whole life,
yes,
and then vegan for
right.
most of his life. Jahina Malik?
Born
Vegan since birth. Carrie Kidd, I don't know what you're up to these days, Carrie Kidd, but I know that he was vegan since birth and is super, super muscular. And, you know, myself, I'm not 𝐬𝐫𝐫𝐷𝐿𝐵𝐴𝐷O, but I was not even a little bit athletic when I went vegan. I was an obese kid who came in second from last in the presidential mile in 8th grade. It was mortifying. But every athletic accomplishment that I've ever achieved was achieved because of things I did after I went vegan. So yes, the short answer to that is it can absolutely be done.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Brussels Radio. Stay in touch with us on socials. We're on YouTube. Our website, veganproteins.com, hit the contact button. We'll always respond, and you'll likely get a video response from one of the coaches here. Once again, my name is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐿.
And I'm Danny.
And we'll be in touch.